In today's video, I'm going to be unmasking the lunar eclipse in Taurus and hopefully helping you find your red thread. So let's get into it. So the solar eclipse in Scorpio actually started the process of helping us expose where these deeper parts of ourselves have been hidden. So where we are possessed by our shadows, where the ghosts still haunt our dreams. This is where we get an opportunity to begin to look at what is still disempowering us and stifling our ability for creative expression. Now that we've actually reached the halfway point or the midway point in this lunar cycle, we get an opportunity to begin to embrace the parts of ourselves that have been rejected, that we have rejected, to look at the shameful aspects, the parts that we consider to be monsters. Do you remember the movie called Joker with the actor called Joaquin Phoenix? Well, there's a thread that I'd actually like to explore with you throughout this video. Now, I'm sure you want to live in a deeper state of alignment and purpose with your meaning. You want to merge with and osmose with something that is deeply inspiring to you. The problem is, when we come into the world, we're immediately met with experiences and information that begins to tell us what is acceptable and what is not. We begin to learn through our karmic patterns within our family and the value ideals associated with our parents and society. Again, what is acceptable, what is not. We also start to learn that there are these boxes that we must fit in order for us to feel accepted. This is what keeps us safe. The problem is these boxes have a limiting capacity as well. They stop us from expanding and growing and challenging our ideas and challenging these pre-existing definitions. And it's like a paradox because we want to feel safe, but we also sometimes want to experience something being alive within us. And if we can cross that boundary, that's the potential. So let's take a look at how this lunar eclipse in Taurus can actually be our red thread and help us out of this labyrinth and into the light. So these are the aspects where I draw my inspiration from and my understanding around the boxes that we find ourselves living within. Saturn in Aquarius points to the rules and regulations that define our sense of identity as we interact with society. So what society perceives as good, what society perceives as bad, that's all under the realms of Saturn. And so as it moves through Aquarius, and it's making these huge impactful squares to the south node, to Venus, to the sun, all the way at the top of the chart there, and of course to the lunar eclipse there in Taurus, you can see how the theme that we are needing to address, and there are many of them, is on one level the parts of ourselves that we need to put up as defenses, that we need to put up protections. We need to put up these masks in order to feel integrated and part of something. But we also deny the deeper parts of ourselves. That's what I've written with the shadow realms, right? The inner realms, the parts that we deny, that society tells us to deny, that our families tell us to deny, because it's too uncomfortable, right? It's too difficult to handle. And in many cases, it's because there's no tools available for us to deal with these things. There's no understanding of these deeper components, and so we need to hide them, we need to put them aside, we need to perceive them as monstrous, because if they're not, then what happens is they are integrated within ourselves. And therein lies the message here, is that what the attempt to escape from pain is what creates more pain. And this is the reference to the movie The Joker right in the beginning of the video, because you can see throughout his storyline that the more pain that he's unable to actually process through, to be able to put out and have it healed, it actually creates a mask that he has to wear that ultimately becomes incredibly dangerous. And that is a warning in many ways as well to the nature of what happens to us when we hide the monster, or in this case, our pain, our ghosts, our shadows. So in this series of aspects here, you can see the full chart of the full moon, and I've written Jupiter retrograde there. As you can see, Mars is retrograde as well, and then Mercury, Sun, and Venus right at the top of the chart. So the reference to Mars retrograde is an interesting one, because this is going to this Mars retrograde is going to take place for, up until January. And what I see here in Gemini is the capacity to rewrite the narrative. Okay? It's the ability to begin looking at the labels that we assign the parts of our sense of identity, the definitions in our societal context. And more importantly within you, because it's a very broad thing to talk about society as a whole. But in terms of individual, where you yourself can be impacted by what I'm sharing here, you want to begin to look at the types of messaging that you use or have internalized that stops you from addressing the part of you that you've needed to hide, right? You may still have a belief around a certain sense of identity that you feel shameful about or wronged about, or it's not allowed. And this Mars retrograde gives us the opportunity to really inwardly explore that. And that, of course, goes along with the Jupiter retrograde. It's going to turn direct, and so is Neptune within the month period. And what's important here to see is that Jupiter going into Pisces just for a bit, and it's also in retrograde motion, implies that this is a deeply inward and reflective space. This lunar eclipse reflects inner reflection of our belief systems. This is the Jupiter. But it also encourages us with the Pisces to look at these parts of ourselves through a compassionate and self-reflective and self-accepting light, so that when we do approach the parts of ourselves, we can see them through mystery, through curiosity, like I've mentioned before. And then the Mercury, Sun, Venus right at the top over there is an opportunity to really inwardly heal and bring light, the sun, to these inner messengers and messages that we have within ourselves. So if we take a look at this chart over here, we can start to see a few profound pieces of wisdom come out of it. And what I draw inspiration from, as you can see there's the Gemini, the Mars in Gemini at 25 degrees, it's retrograde. And I've written change the narrative. And that is Mars in relationship to Pluto, okay? You notice how I've written there fractured and integrated. That's the trine between Saturn and Mars. So we can either perceive the parts of ourselves that have been fractured as frozen, distorted, damaged, wounded, must be neglected, must be rejected, must be ashamed parts. And we remain disassociated in that space. Those parts are disassociated from us. And what that does is it leads us to further feeding that need for addiction, right? And what the addiction is telling us is that there's something here that is fractured, something here that is in pain. And if we can hear that message, if we can hear the message of our addictions as opportunities to integrate that which has been wounded, that which has been hurt, then we can actually experience a deeper state of wholeness. And that's the Jupiter-Neptune message there as well, the potential to see the parts of ourselves as, that we've rejected. And when we see it from an integrated space, the narrative looks more like a curiosity, a willingness to want to explore, an acceptance of these parts. And that leads us to Where is the Love? There's a famous band that was called, pop band that was called the Black Eyed Peas. They released a song in 2003, which was really interesting because Uranus entered Pisces at the time, and the North and South Node, which is where the North and South Node, they were in Scorpio Taurus, right? The North Node was in Taurus. So there's a profound synchronicity there around a message that was brought through at that time. And if you go and look at that song and read the lyrics, you'll see the totality of this whole entire lunar eclipse here. There's an exposure to the things that have been buried. There's an exposure to the things that are negative and are corroding societal structure. And by exposing that, it also promotes the idea of where is the love, where is the wholeness, where is the integration, where is the empathy, where is the self-reflective part of ourselves in which we are, in a sense, not being able to experience. And in terms of Gabor's message here of addiction leads to consuming, where passion leads to the creation, that's what this is. There's a binary here. You can experience the addictions as messengers and as vehicles to feed our suffering, but it will never change. So therefore it's a never-ending loop of consumption until it actually consumes you. Or you could see these parts as opportunities to empower yourself. And through that empowerment, you actually turn your weakness into your strength. So the way that I see that we can connect back to ourselves is by opening up and seeing our addictions and disassociations as messengers for something that is deeper within us. If we can begin to see these parts through the lens of curiosity and mystery, we'll have the opportunity to be able to reintegrate that which has been disowned. If we can do this through acceptance, not through shame, if we can do this through self-recognition as opposed to rejection, we're well on our way to breaking out of the boxes, empowering ourselves, and unmasking the unauthentic parts of ourselves. So if you haven't seen the video on how to empower yourself with these eclipses, I encourage you to click on the video over here.